Dan Deitrich, it is great to hear that music again.
Oh yeah.
It's been a little while. It's good to be back with everybody. We are here on Tuesday, December 6th, still without our fearless leader, Doug Paget, who is taking a much-needed vacation, a little break, and he should be back with us next week, rested, tanned, ready to go, and continue to fight to save democracy. But we're gonna talk some politics today, and we're gonna begin winding down 2020 the same way we wound down 2021, the same way we wound down 2020, 2019, 2018, 2017, 2016, really even 2015, and that means we're going to be talking about Donald Trump.
We just can't quit this guy.
He's like like it's a season of colds, and now that we're all out and about again, it was nice going a couple of years, during the COVID time and pandemic, not catching a cold because we were staying in our homes. But you get the little winter cold, and it just hangs around. You just can't seem to quit the sniffles. You can't quit the cough. That's like Donald Trump. He is this disease that just keeps on.
Just won't let go.
Around. Yeah, but we before we do that though, Dan, how are things there in Michigan? Doug likes to talk about the weather. He says, one of the things we all share in common is the weather. Yeah, how are things in Michigan?
It's cold but no snow, and I kind of like snow, so I'm ready for it. How about you?
Yeah, it is. It's a little chilly, but we've got some rain in the forecast. It's going to be nearly 70 tomorrow and rainy, which is just weird. But I'll tell you, the weather kind of matches our mood around here. We had a rough weekend at our house. We had our 13-year-old, almost 14-year-old dog, Peggy, a flat-haired retriever that we've had since 2009. She succumbed to a large tumor in her abdomen, and that was leaking fluid into her abdomen, and it metastasized. And so it was a tough one when you've got kids that are 23 and 21 and 18 and 9, and you've got a nearly 14-year-old dog. Peggy was a part of their lives, for as long as they can remember.
Yeah.
And, was really a fantastic dog, the best dog we've ever owned. According to my wife, the last dog we're ever going to own. And
we'll see about that.
Well, I think we figured out over the last year that we might be cat people.
Oh.
We've got a couple of cats now that have adopted us, but we just had that really hard day of having to say goodbye to a family member and a dog that we loved a lot. And I know, I used to write columns for our local paper when I was pastoring full time, and I was in the rotation of pastors in the area that would write articles, and several years ago I wrote about one of our dogs who passed away of kidney cancer. Her name was Sydney, and I wrote my column about Sydney's death, and I got more responses to that column than all the other columns I ever wrote for the paper combined. And there's something about it that when you lose a family pet, it's a hard thing that touches a lot of folks. So yeah,
it is.
We're kind of dealing with, and the routine is different. Getting up in the morning and not walking to the door to let her out or fix her breakfast is just feels weird not having her around.
Yeah, when our dog Cooper died, I kept his little his tags, and just hearing the jingle every once in a while would just be like,
yeah,
just brings you back.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we're missing her, but we've got lots of stuff to distract us from that pain, like the pain we have in American politics. But Dan, I don't expect today to be a day of pain. I actually expect today to be a day of rejoicing because it's election day.
That's right.
Not just in Georgia, it's also election day here in Arkansas. I've got a city council race that I'm going to be voting in today, and
Oh, really?
yeah, there's runoffs all over the place. We actually have some candidates for common good that are on the ballot today, and
Oh, wow.
trying to win runoffs. But obviously, the one that everybody's paying attention to is the runoff election in Georgia. Raphael Warnock uh, doing this all again because this happened the election when he was elected in a special election to fill a vacated seat. Both Georgia senators were elected, and both of those races went to runoffs, and so all eyes were on Georgia. And now a year later, after fulfilling that filling the rest of that seat, Senator Warnock is now running for his first full term in the United States Senate, and is up against Herschel Walker, former Georgia standout running back, and a really tremendous running back in the NFL, and maybe not a tremendous Senate candidate. Uh, it has not been good news for Herschel Walker over the last few weeks. He's not campaigned well. He's not had Donald Trump come to town to do a big rally for him, and also, as it turns out, found out this week that maybe Herschel Walker doesn't actually live in Georgia.
Oh, really?
Yeah, did you see this?
No.
you,
But of course, of course.
I mean, why would he? I mean, yeah, it's the Dr. Oz things happening to Herschel
gosh.
Walker here. Yeah, as it turns out, Herschel Walker has listed on his taxes that his primary residence is in Texas, and he has a residence in Georgia that has been rented out for the last several years. That's the residence he's using to run for the Senate in Georgia. So basically, either Herschel Walker has lied to the IRS about where he lives, or he has lied to the FEC, the Federal Election Commission, about where he lives. So, either way, Herschel Walker is not just a spectacularly bad candidate, but also it appears to have committed fraud of some kind in running for the Senate in Georgia,
Wow.
and this is just the latest example of things that have just dampened support for Herschel
Right.
Walker.
Do you think Republicans at this point are having a bit of buyer's remorse, like just regretting putting this guy forward? Like,
Yeah.
so many things.
Yes, absolutely. There was famously I think it was the lieutenant governor of Georgia, who was on Fox News and talking about the long lines and how he waited in line for like 2 hours to vote, got into the voting booth and looked at the choices and decided not to vote for either of them and walked out without voting. Listen, when an elected Republican is refusing to vote for you in a special election after waiting 2 hours to get in line and to get there to the ballot box, and he refuses to touch your name with the stylus, we really need we need some new metaphors. It's a little bit like we talk about taping something, or like our metaphors are all outdated, and they certainly are with voting.
From way back in the 1900s.
Yeah, when you would check a box or you would flip the handle for somebody. Now it's touching the screen with the stylus. He wouldn't do that for Herschel Walker.
Wow,
And
yeah.
I just think there's so many Republicans around the state who are just like, ugh, come on. If this were a race to determine a 50-50 split in the United States Senate, I think that maybe Republicans would be more motivated. But we're seeing in this special election, like we did in the last one, it just doesn't seem like there's a lot of enthusiasm there for Herschel Walker to pull this thing off, and fully expect Raphael Warnock to win today, and frankly to win pretty big. I think it wouldn't surprise me if he gets 53% of the vote. He comes out with a decisive victory. And then, we have the real privilege of having Raphael Warnock back in the United States Senate for the next 6 years, which is a really fantastic thing. I
Yeah.
don't know, Dan, do you have thoughts about Georgia?
Well, my question for you, Rob, is: do you think we've reached like the peak level of terrible candidates, or are we going to continue to see candidates like Herschel Walker or Doc Oz, people that drop into a state to try to win, that have no real connection with the people, and are just like bad candidates on a number of levels? Like, just trying to get them elected, I would think Republicans would have some second guesses, but
I mean, you would think so, right? You would think that, and you've got a lot of elected Republicans that have been talking about candidate quality, and candidate quality is tremendously important when it comes to races. And candidate quality can make all the difference. The Ohio Senate race that we cared a lot about with another terrible candidate. This one, J.D. Vance, who actually got elected. The reason that race was so close in a state that has basically turned red is because Tim Ryan was such an exceptional candidate. The candidate quality was so high. So you see the benefits of a really great candidate running a really great race. Um, and then you get these horrible candidates like Herschel Walker and Dr. Oz that just, new to politics, banking on some kind of fame made in another field. And I personally have no problem with that. I think, I think you don't have, you can be an expert in some area of life and not be an expert at politics. And that could be something that absolutely qualifies you to run for office.
sure.
But these folks have just been, and Herschel Walker in particular, spectacularly bad. That just, it's just so demoralizing for people who would be their supporters. I'm sure, Dan, you saw the whole werewolf
Oh
and
my gosh.
vampire, tirade that Herschel Walker went on has just been hilarious. And Dan, growing up, I was a bit of a professional wrestling fan.
That's right.
And yeah, and this is one of those things that I rarely talk about because it just opens me up to being made fun of in so many ways. But when I'm not listening to the Vote Common Good podcast, it's very likely that the podcasts I'm listening to are nostalgia professional wrestling podcasts, and I can't believe I'm admitting this on the internet. This thing that my family makes a lot of fun of me for. But there's this old trope in professional wrestling that you would have guys that would be good professional wrestlers, but they couldn't do interviews, they couldn't talk, and so like the trick when you had somebody like that was to bring in a manager who would. The manager's job was purely to be a mouthpiece. Usually it wasn't a retired professional wrestler who couldn't go in the ring anymore, couldn't do it physically anymore, but could still talk, and so the manager would be the mouthpiece for him. And we've kind of seen that happen in Georgia, where Ted Cruz and Lindsey Graham have
Yep.
been sitting by Herschel Walker's side because they figured out this guy can't talk. We can't give this guy a microphone. If we give this guy a microphone, he's going to say something absolutely ridiculous. We've got to bring in a manager to talk for him. And Republicans in all their wisdom have thought that Ted Cruz and Lindsey Graham would be the ones to do it. But it looks like that's not going to be enough to resurrect Herschel Walker's campaign. I think we are well on our way to a Raphael Warnock win in Georgia tonight, and that's going to be a great thing.
Yeah, for sure.
And it will be a significant win because of what it means in the United States Senate. If there's a 50-50 Senate, and which if Herschel Walker wins, that would be the case. There'd be a 50-50 Senate. And Kamala Harris, the vice president, would be the tiebreaker. The challenge with that is that with typical Senate rules, when there's a 50-50 Senate, there is power sharing on committees. And so there's an equal number of Republicans and Democrats in committees. Committees are where so much of the work gets done, where bills are crafted, where oversight is taken care of, and you essentially have, full cooperation between the parties for stuff to get passed and to get out of committee. All that goes out the window when you've got 51. 51 gives you full power without the need for a tie-breaking vote. Now, the caveat to this is
Joe Manchin.
Joe Manchin, Kristen Sinema a little bit as well. But what we'll have in the Senate is 51 senators who caucus with the Democrats, because there's a couple of independents who caucus with the Democrats, which will give them the control they need to have majorities on those committees. And that means they'll be able to pass legislation much easier. It will make a big difference, especially when it comes to confirming judges. If you keep in mind what the House primarily does and what the Senate primarily does, the House's primary responsibility is financial. It's economic. It's passing the budget and allocating funds and distributing those. The Senate's primary function is oversight of the judicial branch and confirming judges, giving the president advice and consent, as they say, to cabinet positions, but more important than that, judges. And during the Trump presidency, when Mitch McConnell was in charge of the Senate, they were able to just ram all sorts of federal judges through the system and approve them and get them seated to lifetime appointments on the federal bench, including, as we know, 3 Supreme Court justices. And that's going to have a lasting impact. The next 2 years of the Biden presidency, with a Democratic majority in the Senate, is going to mean that federal judges are going to get approved and seated to the federal bench, and that's tremendously important in the balance of power. So this is a critical race. Not certainly not for who's going to have the majority. Democrats have secured that, but what that majority means and how it's going to function. Senator Warnock holding on to this seat is tremendously important, and I think it's going to happen, and it's going to be a good thing.
Yeah, let's Democrats actually get some things done.
Yeah, which will be important with Republicans controlling the House. Democrats having full control of the Senate will be absolutely critical.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
but that might not be the biggest headline this week or in the last few weeks. To get back to the topic at hand, the guy that we just can't stop talking about. Donald Trump continues to just see how far he can push everyone away from him. So he had dinner with Kanye West, of course, but Kanye invited white supremacist Nick Fuentes to dinner as well. Seemed apparently to surprise Trump. Trump didn't know anything about this guy, and apparently no one on his remaining staff vetted any of this. But it, obviously led to a big blow up. People are like, hey, maybe you shouldn't have dinner with Nazis. And
Dan, if I'm not mistaken, I think this dinner took place on Thanksgiving.
Was it really?
I'm
Did he have over for Thanksgiving dinner?
Dan, I was going to ask you, who did you have Thanksgiving dinner with? Thanksgiving dinner was a little bit different for me this year. My 3 older kids weren't home, and so it was just me and Vanessa and Whimsy, just the 3 of us. Vanessa had to go to work, and so we ate, and then it just was a much different holiday. I'll tell you who wasn't at the table. There were no white supremacists at the table. There were no Nazis at the table. Now, granted, I think probably a lot of us, depending on your family members, maybe you did have
Maybe
Thanksgiving
you
dinner
did.
with with some white supremacists, but not because they were invited over. It was because they're family members, and I mean, Dan, did you have Thanksgiving dinner with any white supremacists? I don't want you to out any family members,
Not
but
that I know of. No.
yeah,
But
yeah, Donald Trump, not so much. He was not sitting down with Barron and Melania and the family to, maybe they had Thanksgiving dinner earlier in the day, and Kanye and Nick Fuentes just came over for, really fantastic turkey sandwiches as leftovers. Maybe that's what it was all about. But yeah, he sat down with Kanye and Nick Fuentes. Now, a number of things came out of this. Certainly, Donald Trump being in the presence of Nick Fuentes and doing so uncritically was, really shocking, because Nick Fuentes is a Nazi sympathizer, a white supremacist, an avowed racist and sexist and homophobe, and just the worst of the worst in that kind of world of alt-right media. Nick Fuentes is he's up there bad, and Donald Trump apparently was amused by him, was impressed by him, according to reports, though he denied it later in a post on Truth Social. But come on, this is a guy who claims that anytime someone is in the news that would shed bad light on Donald Trump, he just claims he never even knew him. And that goes all the way back to the guy that was, getting his coffee or whatever, who, Nick Papadopoulos, right? But can we talk about Kanye? I mean, has anybody fallen this fast, this far, so quickly? I mean, the really hilarious thing with this meeting is that, according to Yi, because I certainly want to, honor his chosen name, Yi has went to meet with Donald Trump, to ask Donald Trump to be his running mate.
just
Because
incredible.
Yi has announced that he's going to run for president, as he did in 2020. He's gonna do it again, and he went to ask Donald Trump to be his running mate, to be his vice president. Can you just like, I mean, I don't want to go to this dinner, but I would love to see video of this happening. Right?
Yeah.
Oh, it's just when you put two absolute narcissists at the table together, like, just hilarious.
Yeah. And it would be funny if also he didn't also claim to really like Hitler.
Yeah.
Just came out and said that, like, no,
Yeah.
A, the Holocaust didn't happen, and B,
Well,
Hitler
I
was
think,
kind of a good guy.
yeah, I think the news today was that Jewish people should just forgive Hitler for the Holocaust and just kind of get over it.
Oh, wow.
And Kanye has also gone full Christian nationalism. I can't believe I'm still checking Kanye quotes, but saw a quote today where he was talking about how if you don't believe in Jesus as Lord, you shouldn't have any position of power in the United States. So what Kanye's been doing is saying the quiet thing out loud, and is getting himself in a lot of trouble for that. Now, I mean, the other really bizarre thing is, Kanye went on the Alex Jones show, and that guy, but went on the Alex Jones show, praised Hitler, talked about how Hitler did a lot of good things, like, as he claimed, inventing the microphone, which Hitler did not do, and also inventing, I think it was paved highways, which also Hitler did not do. But Kanye claimed that he did. And, listen, folks, A, don't ever talk about Hitler. Like, no good comes from that. If you're a public official, if you're running for office, don't mention Hitler's name. And if you do, don't praise him for anything. Any period. Like, just don't. This is just absolute ridiculousness.
Yeah,
But even more ridiculous than that is, Kanye wearing his full face mask. Have you seen this thing?
I have not.
Yeah, so Kanye, when he was on the Alex Jones show, and then I think in an interview today where he was talking about how Jewish people need to forgive Hitler, um, wears a full mask, no eye holes, no mouth hole, no nose hole, just fully face covered in a completely bizarre way. Listen, like, this is not good. And there's folks who want to say, well, Kanye is mentally ill and that's why all of this is happening. Listen, mental illness is a real problem in America. Um, Mental illness contributes to a lot of pain and a lot of heartache. Uh, Being mentally ill does not mean that you will be a Nazi sympathizer.
Right? Being bipolar doesn't make you racist. It doesn't make you anti-Semitic. That's
Yeah,
not a side effect. It might remove your filter so you talk about it more in public places, but it's not putting
yeah,
those hateful ideas in your head.
yeah. So Kanye is in Ye is in Donald Trump's head. You know who else is in Donald Trump's head? The new special prosecutor, the special investigator. So I think since we last talked, Merrick Garland announced that there would be a special counsel, a guy named by the name of Jack Smith, um, who would lead the investigation of Donald Trump. Donald Trump, as we speculated, announced that he would be running for president. I thought that was to try to forestall in any investigations into him and whatever coming indictment would happen. I thought it was his attempt to say, listen, the only reason they're indicting me is because they know I'm going to win the presidency, and try to use it as some kind of political talking point. Merrick Garland, the attorney general, responded to that by saying, yeah, you know what? If a former president is running for office and is under investigation like this, um, the attorney general is appointed by the president of the United States. There is the opportunity for politics to enter into this. So, to get politics out of it, we're going to appoint a special counsel, Jack Smith, and he's going to do the investigating. And Jack Smith apparently is a guy that you don't want to mess around with. He is a war crimes litigator who
Yeah.
works at The Hague, um,
Get stuff
litigating
done.
international war crimes.
This is
Yeah,
serious work that he's doing.
yeah. This is not like this isn't. This is like, I mean, you just look at his face. This is someone that, like, I don't. I mean, I don't think I've got like illegal stuff in my background. I have a lot of like skeletons in the closet. I don't want Jack Smith investigating my life in any way, shape, or form. But he is going to be investigating Donald Trump. And apparently, I don't know. Speaking of Thanksgiving, Donald Trump was, while Donald Trump was having dinner with Nick Fuentes and Yee, Jack Smith, did you see this? Sent a letter on Thanksgiving Day to one of the judges ruling on one of the Trump appeals of this, that, or the other, all the stuff that Donald Trump has been trying to forestall through litigation, this investigation. On Thanksgiving Day, Jack Smith sent a letter to the judge saying, "Here's all the ways that Donald Trump's lawyers are misrepresenting things and what they're lying about." This is a guy who is new on the job, back from The Hague in the United States, doing this investigation and getting stuff done on Thanksgiving Day. Something tells me Donald Trump might be in a world of hurt here.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see because I feel like we've had hopes for some semblance of justice in the past, and somehow nothing ever really shakes out.
Yep.
But this seems like a new level of seriousness, and so maybe there's going to be real world consequences. We'll see.
Yeah. And the news today is that Jack Smith has subpoenaed local officials in Arizona, Michigan, and Wisconsin. According to the report, 3 states that were central to former President Donald Trump's failed plan to stay in power following the 2020 election for any and all communication with Trump, his campaign, and a long list of aides and allies. These requests for records arrived in Dane County, Wisconsin, Maricopa County, Arizona, which I please, if I never hear the phrase Maricopa County ever again, I'll be okay with it. And also in Milwaukee. The first subpoenas that have been sent out by Jack Smith, and seeking to find out if Trump or his aides were trying to pressure local officials not to certify the election, to send fake electors to, buy into the ridiculous big lie of a stolen election and, the stop the steal, which we know that Donald Trump did do that. We know because it was recorded that he had a conversation with the Secretary of State of Georgia, wanting to get the 10,780 votes that he needed to win Georgia. We know that Donald Trump was not above making these phone calls, making these inquiries. We know that Ginny Thomas, the wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, was reaching out to local officials in Arizona. Listen, this is bad news for Donald Trump. It is bad news.
Yeah.
And on top of this, and we didn't talk about this before we started, but in addition to all of this, you layer on top of Jack Smith being the special counsel, you also had Donald Trump's tax returns for the last 7 tax returns turned over to the House Ways and Means Committee for oversight, which is something that Trump had pushed hard to keep from happening. And as a result of that, we got news that Donald Trump did not disclose a nearly $20 million loan that he got from a company with long-standing ties to North Korea. So to make sense of all this for everybody, listen, when you run for office, it's true here in Arkansas. I bet it's true there in Michigan. You have to file some financial disclosures. You have to say, like, these are my assets. This is the money I have. When I ran for office, that was real easy to do because I didn't have a lot of money, didn't have a lot of things. But there's a lot of trepidation that goes into that form where you're trying to fill out, like, okay, I want to make sure I get this right. It's one of those things that when you sign it, it's a legal affidavit saying this is true to the best of my knowledge. And you've got to be completely honest. You've got to be thorough. Someone like Donald Trump, whose finances are tremendously complicated, whose tax returns, he's not filing, on TurboTax with a 1040 EZ, this is super complicated stuff. But a $20 million loan that your company has, that's not the kind of thing you get to just leave off.
Yeah, that's not a whoopsie. We forgot that one.
No, it is a $19.8 million loan from this company that has long-standing ties to North Korea. All of a sudden, we find out, we have wondered for so long, what was this love affair that happened between Donald Trump and
Kim Jong-un?
Yeah, and the little rocket man, and it turns out, maybe there's some financial interest that exists, and that was why Donald Trump, wanted to keep his love letters from the little rocket man, and just all of these things layered on top of each other. It's not good news for Donald Trump. Not good news at all.
And Donald Trump is, expectedly upset about this, and so what does he want to do? He wants to just throw out the Constitution. And he posted a truth on Truth Social saying he wants to get rid of the parts of the Constitution that would prevent him from overthrowing the 2020 election. And it took Republicans a minute, but Republicans are now starting to actually say, no, we shouldn't do that. We shouldn't overturn the Constitution just so you get your way.
Yeah. All of the listen, the former president of the United States, let's just sit with this reality for a second. The former president of the United States suggested that the Constitution should be suspended. The very thing that is the basis of our government, the very thing that he swore to protect and defend, he's like, let's just pause that thing. Let's just pause the rules for a minute, so that I can get the outcome that I want, so that I can be appointed president of the United States once again, based again on the big lie that the election was stolen. I mean, it's just, if like, Dan, this stuff is actually happening. Like, this is
Yeah.
taking place. It is utterly bizarre. And so you wait around for these Republicans that for years and years and years have campaigned on the idea that they love the Constitution, that they're strict constructionists, which is, code language for we take the Constitution literally, just like, there's Christians who take the Bible literally and, believe it was, word for word inspired and dictated by a divine being himself. Republicans have taken the same approach to the Constitution, wanting to figure out what the founders believed, what they were intended, and staying very strict and literal to the letter of the Constitution. And then along comes Donald Trump, who shows that his loyalty isn't to any kind of political philosophy, any kind of approach like this. His loyalty is to himself and his own power, and putting Republicans in the seat of now having to disavow the president that they once were so defending of, because he let's just suspend the Constitution. It just shows that the hypocrisy here goes so deep with these folks.
Yeah. Everyone loves the Constitution until it gets in the way of you keeping power.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden it's a flexible thing.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is, we long anticipated that there would be a significant fracture within the Republican Party, and we kept waiting around for that to happen. And I don't want to, so many times Donald Trump has just betrayed all expectations, and Republican leadership and frankly Republican voters too have just defied all logic in their defense of him. I think what we're seeing now is finally these fissures actually coming to bear in the Republican Party. I think tomorrow, when Herschel Walker is defeated in Georgia and Trump's hand in a race that, frankly, Republicans should have won that race in Georgia. That should be a Senate seat they should be able to take, and not being able to do it because of Donald Trump's handpicked candidate in Herschel Walker. I think we're going to see some national Republican leaders actually kind of distancing themselves in a real way from Donald Trump. This is going to be the opportunity they have to kind of pull back, especially when you see how his presidential campaign has started with such little momentum, and just has not seemed to get off the ground. I think we're going to see national Republican leaders pulling back from Donald Trump and trying to chart a different course. That's going to be difficult, though, because of the apparatus that controls the Republican Party.
That's right.
And it's one thing for national leaders to try to distance themselves. It's another thing to actually have the infrastructure of the party And one of the things we saw happen in the Trumpification of the Republican Party is that Donald Trump and his team took full control of the Republican Party and merged their donor lists. And
Mm-hmm.
Donald Trump controls fundraising for the Republican Party and has, had an agreement with the Republican Party for them to pay his legal bills, and they have done that. The Republican Party has, like, barely exists in terms of infrastructure, all of the digital organizing, the targeted ads, the email, all of that stuff that keeps a party going, where party leadership can identify who sympathetic donors and voters would be and communicate to them. All of that stuff is controlled by Donald Trump and his team and their loyalists, and so Rona McDaniel, who's been the chairwoman of the Republican Party for the last several years, Mitt Romney's niece, by the way, parenthetically, has gone all in for Donald Trump and allowed that to happen, allowed the Republican Party to pay for Donald Trump's legal fees. And you get some sense that maybe there's some Republicans that are pulling back from that now and saying, okay, it's time for us to think about this differently. It's time for us to have a post-Trump infrastructure to stay viable as a party in the United States. Because when you look at voting numbers, I mean, Republicans are in a minority
Yeah.
in terms of national numbers. So how do you maintain viability as a party if we can't self-differentiate from Donald Trump? And so in response, you know, Mike Lindell, the pillow guy,
Yeah, it's time for some fresh leadership, is what
he's
you're
gonna
saying in the
he's
RNC.
yeah, at this very moment where Republicans might be pulling away from Donald Trump, um, Mike Lindell, who is one of Trump's most loyal followers, announced that he's running to unseat Rona McDaniel as chair of the Republican Party, and he wants to run it.
Yeah, the My Pillow guy, who was the biggest peddler of the big lie, like spent hours on his show, cranked out some sort of weird documentary pushing the big lie. He wants to be in charge.
Yeah, wants to be in charge. Now, this is a guy who has proclaimed over and over and over again that he has all kinds of cyber experts. And listen, I do work in politics, and so much of political organizing right now is all about the data that you have, being able to analyze it, being able to use that data effectively to raise money and to turn out votes. That is what in the information age, that is what party infrastructure is all about, and it's so tremendously important. And Mike Lindell, who claims to have cyber experts who can figure out where the votes have been flipped in voting machines and all of this stuff, and frankly has shown, I mean, I'm being a little sarcastic, has shown himself to be an absolute buffoon when it comes to this stuff. This is the guy who's going to be in charge of all of the data. And, he's going to be bringing his cyber experts that have, frankly, shown bupkis about all of these claims. He's going to be the one, massaging all of this digital data. It's laughable. Now, that's if he's elected. He's announced he's going to run against Rona McDaniel. Also, Lee Zeldin, who ran an upstart campaign for governor of New York, and did much better than people expected in New York, and it looked like that was going to be a real competitive race right down to the end. He ended up losing, but he's also announced that he's going to run. So what we have is there are folks within the Republican Party who have a lot of angst about the future, and Trump is trying to keep control of it. And listen, if Mike Lindell wins the chairmanship of the RNC, do you think they're going to stop paying for Donald Trump's legal fees? No. Like, this is part of the plan to keep Donald Trump on the party dole, and to keep him from having to pay any of his own money from doing this stuff, and for the consequences of his actions.
Now, remind
That's
me,
what.
who elects the chair of the RNC, and is there any chance that my pillow guy gets it?
So typically, the RNC, the Republican National Committee, it's a committee made up of people elected from the states and so it's party insiders. Different states have different rules. Some are elected, some are like whoever the party, the chairperson of the state. There's delegates. There's a whole apparatus of like party insiders. It's elected leaders. It's party officials from the states who make up the committee. And really, like, there's no telling at this point. I don't know. I did see today that Alex Jones had a poll about, polling his listeners about who should be chair of the RNC. And as it turns out, Mike Lindell was leading that. So what you typically want in the chair of a national party is you want someone who can communicate well, someone who can go on Fox News, who can go on CNN, go on MSNBC, and give a good interview and analyze things and spin things for the party. And then you want someone who can organize well, someone who knows how to put an infrastructure together, a team together that can build out what is needed to win on the state level, on the local level. And that means identifying voters, identifying donors. Howard Dean has been the chair of the DNC. You might remember Howard Dean from his famous scream on election night in Iowa
Yep.
many years ago.
Isn't it funny, side note, that like sort of ended his run?
It was a
And
different world.
like something like that could derail a political career. Just an awkward moment. But now it's like you can have any sort of crazy allegation against you, horrible things. You're
Completely
clear to run.
different world.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, this kind of internal political stuff might seem kind of like boring and it doesn't matter, but it actually does matter long term in how things play out and the shape that the party's going to take. So we'll find out, how much sway Donald Trump continues to have if you talk about Donald Trump, who is absolutely obsessed with loyalty and having loyalty from people. Man, he is willing to throw people to the side, left and right. He just did it to Ronna McDaniel, who stood by his side for his entire presidency and since. And what does her loyalty get her? Nothing. Donald Trump has endorsed the pillow guy to be
Yeah.
chair of the RNC. Now, the other thing on the Democratic side that's super interesting to political nerds, did you hear this news that the primary calendar is changing, Dan?
I did, and I heard it's looking
Yeah.
kind of good for Michigan here.
Yeah. So typically, for years and years and years now, Iowa and New Hampshire have gone first in their primaries, and when you go first, you get the opportunity to really influence who's got the momentum, who's leading. It's not the end of the world to lose Iowa or to lose New Hampshire, uh, but certainly it hurts if you do. And Barack Obama won Iowa, and that propelled him on to victory over Hillary Clinton, and his ability to win Iowa did that. Democrats are actually looking at the electorate, at the maps, and looking at their voting base and saying, listen, is Iowa the most representative voting base? Does Iowa look like the Democratic Party? And they have made the decision now that Iowa and New Hampshire aren't going to be first. South Carolina is going to be first.
Wow.
And this is really significant because if you remember back to 2020, Joe Biden did horribly in Iowa. Joe Biden did horribly in New Hampshire.
Mm-hmm.
And then Joe Biden won South Carolina. And that night, it might have been the next day, Amy Klobuchar and Pete Buttigieg both dropped out of the presidential race and
Mm-hmm.
threw their support behind Joe Biden. And he went on to Super Tuesday and locked things up and became the Democratic nominee and became president of the United States. South Carolina was the reason that happened, and now South Carolina is going to be first in get the first shot at choosing who the Democratic nominee is going to be. I think it completely reshapes what presidential elections are going to look like, and how influential the black vote is in choosing who the Democratic nominee is. I think this is a way of rewarding South Carolina. And you just think about the amount of money that gets spent in a state, with all of the campaigns coming to those states, with all of the advertising that gets done, all of the media coverage. It is a huge economic boon for a state, to go first and to have their like them be the focus of the political world in our country, and rather than just being lumped in on Super Tuesday with 18 other states, it's a big deal to go first. South Carolina gets rewarded for going for Joe Biden, and Democratic Party is saying, "Hey, we want to have a voter base that is more representative of our voting base than Iowa is." This is big news for the future of the country. That you think like that it doesn't matter like what
Yeah.
order these states are voting in. Actually, this is I think is going to be a really big deal.
So if politicians, candidates are forced to, I don't know, broaden their platform or their talking points wider than an Iowa demographic, how do you think that shifts things for the Democratic Party?
Well, I think what it does is I think it helps long-term folks who have a history in South Carolina, like it helped Joe Biden. I also think it's going to help candidates of color as well, because there's a much larger black vote in South Carolina than there is in Iowa, and giving folks the opportunity to elect representatives who look like them. Representation matters, and I think long term it's going to have an impact. I think we're going to see, and it's funny to say this because Joe Biden is kind of the exact opposite of this. To say, like, I think it means long term that we're going to see fewer older white guys, but I also think it helps Joe Biden if he gets a primary challenge in 2024. And Gavin Newsom announced that he won't primary Joe Biden in 2024. But if he gets a primary challenge in 2024, I think it actually helps him because he's got deep roots in South Carolina, and they were able to deliver the nomination to him in 2020. So, it's one of those things that we'll have to see how it plays out,
Yeah.
like everything else. But it's just one of those little interesting tidbits.
Do you see this as a way of shoring up, a second run for Joe Biden? Is he definitely running? Or is this just putting some pieces in place?
I think
If he does,
yeah, I think it certainly helps if he does. And there's a news report today. There's a Yahoo news report that Biden will likely announce his 2020 bid after the holidays. It's looking more and more like he is going to run. So I don't know. We'll see.
yeah. I just
I
hope
guess
he
we'll-
doesn't. I hope
Yeah,
he
we'll
doesn't.
save our opinions about that for the future. But, give us something to talk about other than Donald Trump.
Yeah. Maybe it's time to just spend some time with the great grandkids,
Yeah.
Joe.
So I mean, lots of stuff happening in the
Yeah.
news. It's certainly the slow time in the political season, but that doesn't mean that there's a lot happening. There's a lot going on in the news. There's a bunch of stuff that we haven't even touched on.
Yeah, we
but-
didn't even touch on the January 6th committee.
Oh
but,
yeah, I mean,
but we'll get
yeah,
into it.
Yeah. I mean,
That's not going away.
Yeah, we talk about. Yeah, we'll leave everybody with some good news. Talk about stuff getting layered on for Donald Trump. We've got this. We've got the special counsel. We've got this this loan information that's come out because his tax returns have been turned over to investigators, and now we get news from Chairman Benny Thompson of the January 6th Commission that the January 6th Committee has decided that they're going to make criminal referrals, and listen, and those criminal referrals are going to target, according to Benny Thompson, um, leaders and organizers of the January 6th insurrection, and anybody who's been watching, as we have, knows that the number one leader and organizer of all of that, in the mind of the January 6th Committee, is Donald Trump himself.
Yeah. Yeah, that's big news.
So, Christmas miracle. Justice might finally take place.
Dear Santa, all I want for Christmas.
Yep. I had a chance to sit on Santa's lap yesterday. And,
oh, neat.
Yeah, there was cookies with Santa at my daughter's school, and she took a little note that said, she wanted a Nintendo Switch for Christmas, and gave that to Santa. I wish I had taken a note that said, all we want for Christmas is a indictment and conviction of Donald Trump. That would be great. But I did jump in after I took Whimsy's picture with him. I did jump in and get a selfie with Santa, which I think I was the only parent who did that.
I was going to say, was that a thing all parents were doing, or
no,
just
no.
you're like, I'm getting in on this.
I'm getting in on this. Yeah, good times.
A kid at heart. I love it.
Yeah. Well, thanks everybody for Dan. Have we forgotten any other news stories? I think we covered most everything. I think Doug will be back with us soon, and we look forward to resuming our conversations. Thanks everybody for listening in and being a part of this, wherever that might be, whether it's on YouTube or on the podcast. Just listening. Thank you so much for your support, and we'll keep doing what we need to do to protect democracy and to see the common good be a much bigger part of our culture.
Yeah. We'll see y'all soon. Bye.